it's like game time, you know, like we're live, we're good to go. So let me just double check on my YouTube. A couple times Restream will start streaming and it actually isn't streaming on YouTube, which makes no sense, but let's just double check that it's on.
You're not playing your characters today, Cade. Usually you got the glasses and the hat and okay.
We'll start strong. We'll start strong.
All right. I kind of like the other version, like yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good to go here.
I like the more Cade version instead of the meme Cade, but you know, whatever you want to do, I'm comfortable with. Yeah, no, it's your show, man.
We'll start off strong with the glasses. Okay, we are all set over here. Fire. All right, we'll get started. Guys, welcome to the Joyage Kingdom. I'm Cade, your guide. I'll be replacing the little voice side drive for now, giving you a break from the constant internal monologue that is the human mind. I want to say first, thank you for listening or viewing on whatever platform you're on. If you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, join the kingdom. Today, I'm joined by Fortuna Finance founder Tull. It's going to be lit. We're talking about money, we're talking about APY stuff. We're talking about NFTs, talking about life, business, the whole shebang. Kids, maybe. You know, who knows? Who knows what happens? But anyways, thanks for coming on the show.
Got plenty of those. Yeah, thanks for having me, kid. It's an absolute pleasure. I love your energy, by the way, man. Like just talking with you for a few minutes. So I'm looking forward to what you have in store here.
Hell yeah, man. I'm super pumped. And plus, like I was saying just a second ago, the whole gaming setup makes me feel like at home. I feel like we're in a metaversal studio. Like that's actually one of the coolest things that could potentially be in the future for me. As long as I stay in the realm of podcast hosts, there potentially in my lifetime should be a time where like I can have a full podcast in a different state or different country with you, but it'll feel like I'm right here next to you because like a hologram will pop up, and I'm super excited to see what that is. But
that would be sweet. There's something about the human interaction. I think to your point, that should where things should be going, because you can't avoid this. You know, we're human beings. We read a lot of things through facial and body language type stuff, right? So when you don't have that and you're just an avatar in a game or just like a picture on a screen, you lose about 80 to 90% of what someone's trying to say, actually, which is way undervalued, I think, in today's age, right? Is like if I'm not physically showing myself, then I lose a ton of what you're trying to do.
We got used to it too with COVID, you know, and the masks. I remember like I was serving at a restaurant at one point during that COVID thing, and I remember being like, God, I feel like I'm like half my game is in like my facial expressions. I feel like I can't even like sway these tips. So
no, but that's true. Like the thing is, you're not really like a person with the nose and mouth covered. Like I just feel like it's kind of like no one, like you're kind of like a robot almost, because all you can see is people's eyes, and you can only tell so much. Like I say a lot typically, but still, like you're missing the bottom half of someone's face. Like it's tough. It's very. They said that didn't have an impact on kids. I'm not so sure I agree with that. Like people,
everything has an impact.
Read someone's face. Yeah,
everything has an impact. I'm sure we've all been affected in ways we don't even know yet. Like literally half or probably most of the things we don't even know for a few more years. You know, I've noticed definitely changes my personality since like my inner introvert came out, and it's not bashful about it. It's totally cool being alone way more than I was before, like kind of doing nothing. That's why I'm so blessed that the Web3 world came, honestly, like the most perfect time. Like it almost allows me the luxury and the excuse to just sit around for like 2/3 of the day, you know?
No, I'm the same way. Like I'm not big on like camera or like going to clubs or like going out with people. Like if it's a small group, I'm totally game, but like I get a little overwhelmed in like theme parks when it's just completely packed. If it's a little light and like you know, a little bit of people, but man, when it gets to be too much, I'm kind of the same way you are. So yeah, I agree with you. Like I think my priorities really changed ever since the pandemic hit. Basically, like I really have grown a lot, and things have kind of changed for me in many different ways, like real like personal life and business life. So it's been a great honestly like journey so far.
Do you want to get into that, like some of the biggest changes that you've had?
Yeah, I think just listening to myself more instead of like, because like I always had this inner voice tell me, hey, you need to start your own company. You need to start your own company. This was like literally in college. I ignored it because I'm like, nobody in their right mind tells you to start your own company because it's so risky. You never know what's going to happen. And like, it's just not a very encouraged type of thing, because parents want safety. They want security. They want comfort. Right. And when you run your own company, you sometimes don't get that, right? Or like it's just really, really hard sometimes. Like I don't think some of the bigger names in the business world really get enough credit. They get a lot of shade and they get a lot of hate, and I kind of feel bad for them in a way, because okay, yeah, they're rich, but like man, there's a lot that comes along with that, and it's really, really hard to to lead a company and be the face and do all the interviews and everything else. So like, I think that like, if by the way, if something inside of you is saying, hey, you should do this, then like you should at least explore it and see what's going on. Because as soon as I started listening to that voice, like everything has changed for me. Like literally just has opened up so many doorways. And I actually like, I still have a full-time job.
Hell yeah.
Just because of the security it brings. It's great. But I also have other things I can do like outside of work that I really enjoy and just something I can have fun with. And it makes me a happier person in general. It makes me a better person to be around for like my family and my friends. And it just allows me to it's self-discovery. Like everybody needs a little bit of self-discovery in their life. I don't care like where you are or who you are. Like you're always kind of like uncovering things about like what you're into and like where you're going and where you need to grow more, etc. So that's really what changed the game at a super high level. There's like no details attached, but it just feels like a completely different ball game after like 2 to 3 years of just working from home and really just listening to what I don't know if it's higher power, God, whatever you want to call it. That's what it is for me. But I think you can name it anything. You can name it your subconscious, whatever it is. But I think everybody's kind of got that inside of them. And I just think that people should listen to that more.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. Gary Vee would be fucking proud of that message right there. He was one of the people I started listening to, who finally got me to like get off my butt and try something. I think we always kind of give ourselves some slack, or maybe too much. I mean, it's good sometimes to give yourself slack, but I think there's times where you make excuses for yourself as to why you didn't do it, and you kind of justify why you didn't do it until one day you're like, man, I really am never gonna, like, for example, the most tangible one I can give for my life is like, I want to have a podcast. It's like, yo, the only thing you have to do if you want a podcast is literally turn the camera on and start talking. Like, you literally have a podcast. Like, you can be 3 episodes in and call yourself a podcast host. Like, that's how ridiculously easy it is. Same with photography. You can go do a few photo shoots. If you have natural talent from the get-go, then maybe you can even start charging immediately. But you can just do 3 or 4 photo shoots and you're like, all right, I can kind of do photography. And you can just spend 2 or 3 months just doing them. And now you're a photographer, like full-fledged photographer. And so that's pretty much the only difference between the people who do make it and the ones who don't. Are like, Layla Hormozi said this in the past podcast. She was like, we all have the same feelings of like getting scared, getting nervous, getting lazy. The only difference between people who make it and don't are they do it anyway. And I was like, oh, fuck. That's really it. Like, you just do it anxiously. So
no, that's a really good point, to take action. And like, that was something I didn't do, right? I didn't take action on what my body or like God was telling me, whatever you want to call it. Right. So I'm with you. Like, yeah, just taking action. And it's definitely scary. Like, running your own crypto project, tying your name to it is like super scary thing to do in a super risky space. But like, the thing is, if you don't like truly believe in something, don't do it. Like, don't even start, like, because otherwise it's going to be half baked and everybody's going to see right through it and it's not going to really work. So
yeah, I agree.
That's the other thing I've learned too, is that like, if I really believe in something, I'm just going to go after it. And like, I don't really care what other people think. And
speaking of that, what do people think, bro? What do people think? Have you told anyone?
Oh, they think I'm insane. I tell people I'm running my own crypto project. They look at me like I am like from planet Mars or something. Like, you're what? Some people think it's cool. They're like, well, that's really cool. That's kind of crazy. I was actually talking, funny story. One of my kids' friends' dads is like from the IRS. And I was talking about my crypto project. He's like, oh, and I'm like, where do you work again? Yeah, the IRS. I was like, yikes. Okay. But I told him, I'm like, I never would like intentionally lie to the government. It's just a really bad idea. Just lying in general is a really bad idea, but like lying to the government is like just a terrible. It's like, it's such an easy way to just end up in a bad place, whether that's jail or a bunch of fines.
Yep.
So I even told
you'll
him
lose
straight
that battle.
up, oh, 100%. Well, this is the thing about everything that you hide or you try to lie about. It always comes up to fruition. It always comes back to bite you, whether you think it's not, it's going to. Like, it's just one way or the other, right? What form is it going to take, basically? So
yeah.
Anyway, that was a bit of a ramble. I like to ramble a lot.
This is the perfect place to do it, bro. The perfect place to do it. I don't have, unless you have a time limit, I'm good to go till kind of just whenever. So hell yeah, man. Well, so you got into this crypto world. You're doing your own project here. Why do your own project? I know you said you wanted to, like, you're an entrepreneur and stuff, but starting a crypto project specifically is very scary. especially in this kind of market.
Yes.
And we're seeing people, well, one, we're seeing people drop left and right, but also you're right about the regulation stuff. You put your entire professional and personal life at risk here.
Yeah, true. And so the thing is, there's a good and bad thing. It's a kind of a double-edged sword in the sense that there's no regulations or anything really around crypto yet. So that's where I feel a little bit safer, where I'm like, well, there's no precedent set. So like no one said you cannot do X, basically. So I'm like, I'll still try to innovate and be creative. I am in no way, shape, or form trying to like rip people off. That is not my intention whatsoever. I'm just trying to innovate on concepts that I think are cool, that I think can work. And actually, if they actually have some good thought process and good logic behind them, they can actually work. At the end of the day, it's still a bit of an unknown space, which I think is why DeFi is so cool, because it's so unregulated and you can kind of just do creative things that who knows if it's going to really work out or not. But again, if you kind of base that off of like logic, you do some data modeling, you try to figure things out in the think tank. Of course, the end result is hard to predict, but I think that like DeFi has kind of gotten a bad rap and people are scared of regulation because they're kind of doing really sketchy shit that like no one should really be doing, right? We see a lot of rugs. We see a lot of like, oh, we just turned some random thing off on our project. Sorry, good luck to you. Like we see a lot of that, right? And so
literally exactly what happened.
yeah, there's one, yeah, I think it was a couple days ago or something, but anyway, so like the thing is like, I feel like, hey, if I have good intentions and I'm trying to make the world a better place, I shouldn't really let fear and let like being frightened, to your point earlier, stop me from trying to do something like that. Because again, I felt called in the very first place to start my own company. It's kind of led me on a weird journey. I somehow got into DeFi, got burned a lot, got super frustrated with the projects I was on. And instead of like, I kept thinking, oh, someone's going to do it right. Or, oh, they're going to make a good decision. That like never happened.
Never came.
And I just, everything I had basically was like going to zero. And I'm like, I'm just sick and tired of like being on someone else's project and them kind of having to run the show and making very, very poor decisions, not only from like a crypto standpoint, but also like a business standpoint and just like fairness. And so I wasn't even actively thinking, oh, I'm going to start this crypto project, blah, blah, blah. I literally woke up one night, had an epiphany. I pinged an old friend of mine and was like, hey, what do you think about this? How cool do you think this would be if we could create a more sustainable model to give out rewards to people that earn them in an ecosystem, right? So that as soon as I kind of realized, oh, this could be done so much better and like nobody's really doing what we're doing, then I'm like, we have to try this. Like we absolutely.
Who is your friend? Was he like a developer?
He is an aspiring developer. We were actually going to partner together, but unfortunately, like the project is somewhat a bit of a spider web of logic that I was like, sorry, bro, I don't think we can partner, but like maybe you can join us later down the road. It was somebody I was just collabing with. Like we were just friends. And so unfortunately, like that didn't work out because I'm like, I think I need like a pro development team. Like this is not something, I'm a coder myself. So like, I know things can get really dicey, especially when it comes to like, I didn't mention this, but I'm a full stack web developer. Actually, I just don't know Solidity code very well. So I was like, I can't have some rookie. Like I know when I start on something new, I make so many mistakes. It's like insane. And when it comes to smart contracts, once it's published, it's live. That's it. Like it's set.
Right.
That's all you got to work with. So
wait, while we're on that, can you say why that is? Like some people, when they hear that, they're like, wait, why can't you just do like a quick redo or undo thing? But it's like, that's not the case. Like once you click it, it's really there. It's really there.
Yeah, because basically the way it is everything is tied to that address. And anytime you change the code, the address changes. So like the liquidity, meaning like in our example, like sometimes you have BNB, BUSD, AVAX, something like that. All of it's tied to that address, that token address, basically. If you change literally a letter of the code, the token address will change on you, right? And then you basically have a new version, but you have no way to actually transact with it because there's no BUSD, BNB, or AVAX tied to it. So there is such thing as proxy contracts, by the way. So I'm okay with those. Like I think those make sense. They are a little bit more. I feel like crypto can be done better in general when it comes to smart contracts because you should be able to release versions of a token, right? You should be able to release versions. That is the idea behind proxy contracts in general. I just think proxy contracts right now are a little bit too loose in the sense that like I can just release a version just because. And I feel like they got to do something about that. But that's the only way around it today is something called a proxy contract, which again, I'm not like 100% familiar with the technical details, but
Yeah.
standard smart contracts, yeah, you literally can't change anything because everything that you do is tied, especially from like when you're swapping it, right? For whatever it is, BUSD, BNB, AVAX, it's all tied to that single address.
Yeah, man. The entire crypto NFT world right now has, because there's no regulations, because you can pretty much just copy and paste someone else's shit. There is no barrier to entry, and the issue is with NFTs specifically too, is that like with NFTs, there's a, well, actually no, this is crypto and NFTs. There's always a chance to potentially make a flip, and so you're better off just taking the bait anyway and saying, this is probably not going to do anything, but like just in case we buy like $100 worth, and then everyone thinks that at the same time, and so you can have a project where there's absolutely no good intention, there's no thought process, it's just straight up bullshit, but it picks up. And people end up wanting, you're like, oh, fuck. Like, how many projects do you think are out there that accidentally blew up? I think there's a lot.
I actually think the ones that didn't think or had like no good intentions are likely the ones that blow up than not. Because the thing is, the fact of the matter is, a human nature for us is more about instant gratification and more about getting what I can now versus working with a longer term project that has a better vision. That actually kind of works against you. At least on my project, it has, because it's like, wait, Luke, you're telling me I got to wait to get rewards? Well, yes, like that's typically how the world works. Like we can maybe speed that up a bit and maybe like cut some corners here and there. But the fact of the matter is we can't cut that completely. This is like a fact of life. This is the thing DeFi, and I think crypto projects in general have gotten wrong, is that we think that we can just avoid pain and we can just get rewards for free. That's not how the world works, right? Like you were talking about starting a podcast, is like that's not going to be a straight rocket to the top. Maybe you get lucky, you win the lottery, and you get some crazy guest on here, and then you go to the top. But like that likely is going to require like a ton of work before upfront that no one sees, right? So I think crypto NFTs kind of have to your point, sometimes they blow up for like no good reason outside of just human psychology and FOMO, basically. Whereas well thought out projects take like years and years and years to develop, and those investors typically don't last that long. People want their flip it in like a month. And that's a long time for people. That's actually,
very long time.
They want to flip it in like 5 days, right? So we're kind of going against the grain because we're telling people, hey, on this specific project, we're talking about like months at a time that you'll need to stay on to actually get good rewards. Some people like that because they're like, yeah, that makes sense because it's probably more sustainable. A lot of people don't because they're like, hey, but I just want everything now. What do you mean I can't have everything I want right now when I want it? Like,
those are the same people who are screaming about wanting a free mint just so they can flip it for 0.0002 ETH. I'm like, fam, you lost money. You lost money trying to list this fucking NFT than you did. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's wild to me seeing that stuff. But you're right about dwindling down almost your reach. Oh, actually, let me backtrack. It's almost better if you launch a project with, how you said, basically no anything, just see if it picks up, and then when it does, or if it does, that's when you turn it on and say, hey, okay, we've got these new people in who are all hyped about the project. Now we can hit them with some like actual things that we've got going on. That's like almost the best way to do it, instead of attacking it, saying, hey, we're offering this, we're offering that, we're different because of this and this and this. It's like, maybe you should go in saying fuck all and then just blow everyone's expectations after. So I don't know, that like low key is a strategy right there. There's probably has been some projects who did that.
No, that's not necessarily a bad strategy. This is kind of, I'm in e-commerce as well. So like I ran a 7-figure store. I don't think it's gonna do 7 figures this year. Well, it might, but basically that was the strategy, is to throw stuff at the wall and just see if it stuck. That was it. Like, because you don't know really what's gonna work. Yeah. So like this project is like definitely completely opposite, where it's like, we really think this is going to work. We're going to put all of our eggs in a single basket and hope to God it works out. I could just lose like 50 grand. I mean, that can actually happen. But like the thing is I saw it was in the space, and we basically iterated off of that. Cause like, hey, these things might be able to work if they had a lot of tweaking done, basically. Right. So it was kind of using what the market likes and tweaking it a bit. The problem is it's been 4 months since that's the case. So we're kind of in a weird position where it's like, people are kind of turned off by the project, the type of project we're running, but they don't realize that under the hood, it's a completely different operation than most other projects out there. So it's a tricky uphill battle. To your point, it would probably be better to just be like, hey, we're thinking about doing X. Let's see if we can get some investors. And then if we can, we'll run with it. If not, hey, we'll just go to the next idea. That's probably a better approach. I would agree with you there. So
yeah, man. And the audience that we have, well, honestly, my audience is a bit different than many other YouTubers because I don't make as many like alpha videos where it's like buy this project tomorrow 20x. I don't typically have that kind of person in my audience. And so shout out to people who are watching. Usually they're trying to do something. Maybe they're trying to make a career. That's my biggest thing. I'm trying to push people to try and make a career or something, or at least make a name for yourself. I'm like, if this is going to be the space, then don't you want to be like someone in this? If it's going to be like, you're already early, you're already here. You're already ahead of 99% of people. They don't even know what Web3 means or is, or what blockchain is, or any of those things. If you ask them, the only thing they know is, that's that Bitcoin thing. And then they make fun of you because the price is down. Like that's the only thing that's the level of extent they're hitting. But anyways, with this coin, so I know you got into a little bit of why you made it. So the way it works for people who don't know, there's an APY that you're able to choose when you get in. You're able to choose if you want to lock, if you want to, Jesus Christ, I can't speak. You're able to choose if you want the massive return, like, I don't even know what the highest percentage. It was crazy amount of high percentage, but you got to lock it up.
It's outrageous, right? It's outrageous. The thing is, it's actually really hard to accomplish. Which you can't say this on a lot of other projects. And again, this is not a fun message to preach. Hey, you can't really get really good rewards unless you put in a ton of effort and time. That sucks from a marketing perspective. That is terrible, right?
It sucks for people like me. Like I said in the video, I was like, look, I'm going to take the easiest one that I don't have to do anything because I'm doing these other things. But that's my specific situation. There's a lot of people who are literally like my friend Will. He spends 99% of his time doing either he's doing degen stuff or he's keeping up with all the things like this, where he's got to go in and double check things and check numbers and stuff like that. So for him, he's taking the highest one because he wants to be in there. He wants to be checking it. So it's there's tons of different types of people.
Yeah, and that's why we try to cater to both audiences, basically. We do have 6 different options to choose from. There are like super safe options that you like literally do nothing. You can get rewards. Well, not nothing, like click a button basically to claim rewards. But so we have basically you could be in any one of those options or all of them at the same time, like in a single wallet. So we tried to like basically cater to different audiences. Like, hey, we know there's some people that just want rewards like faster. They probably should pick some of the lower end options that aren't as high APY, but it's still ridiculous. Like it's still like 0.75% per day, which is like just kind of outrageous, right? In a way. And when it comes to like returns, it's like dividends on speed is kind of what I tell people, like on steroids. And then we have those later options like you're talking about, which is more of like, you're not going to see a lot in the beginning. You actually believe in like what Fortuna Finance is doing and you like where we're going and you think we can actually execute that plan. That's kind of more on the later like stage of wars they start out super low. Like we're talking about like 0.25% per day. And that it gets better by, I don't know, like 0.5% per day or something like that. So like it takes a long time to get up to those really, really higher APYs. So people see the APYs on our project and they just run. They just like, oh God, not one of these again. Oh shit. Sorry. Looks like my sound is on. But they're like, oh, not again, like not one of these projects, blah, blah, blah. And so we have a very big uphill battle. The thing is like not many projects do this either, where they actually consider what post-launch tokenomics look like, right? Like they kind of just build the smart contract. They put everything together as fast as possible typically. And then they just launch the project and be like, gosh, I hope it works. Cause like, again, we talked about the smart contract issue where it's like, and the other thing too is if you change that, if you migrate to other versions, I don't know if you've ever been part of a migration. Oh man, like you lose most people in a migration, right? So
I agree.
Most projects don't think about what ifs basically, and we try to think through a lot of those what ifs. So like we have a lot of different levers we can pull to like adjust our total supply, or how are we going to get rewards, or how many tokens are we going to burn on our volume or like transactions being done. So we try to make it to where like if we need to go super extreme and like burn a ton of tokens, we could do it automatically with a couple like button entries, basically a couple keyboard entries. Yeah. And then on the opposite end, it's like, hey, if the project's doing well, it's healthy, and we just want to put more money away in the treasury to like build better features for it, we can do that as well.
Right.
So that's the big difference, I think, with Fortunas is that we've had so much time because of bear market basically and failed marketing team, by the way. But that was we've had to pivot like 5 different times already and we're not even live yet.
Yeah.
So
that's how it is,
I thought this was going to be so easy. I was like, oh, I'm going to launch it. Like, I know how to code. Like, I've led projects before. I've done IT projects. That's what I do in my like full-time job. So I'm like, oh, like it's just going to be like another, I guess feather in my cap or something. That is not the case at all. Like, it did not play out that way at all.
Yeah, man. The Web3 hard is a little bit different, especially because, well, in a professional setting, you're typically dealing with professionals everywhere, and in this world, you got a whole lot of pretenders. You got a whole lot of people who actually haven't done anything and they don't know what they're doing. And
that's definitely true.
Yeah,
that's what we dealt with. We basically had a marketing team that like just took money and didn't really do much. Like that's basically what happened. Like they were supposed to spend like $2,500 on marketing. I was told they didn't spend a dime, and I'm like, so they just kept the 10,000 and kind of just drug us along till we fired them. Like that's basically what happened.
Yeah, you're seeing that a lot, especially because marketing is what, like, I get these LinkedIn people who will connect with me and they're like CEO YouTube expert. I'm like, all right, where's your YouTube channel? Like, where's any proof at all? And they're just like, oh, like I work with YouTubers. I'm like what? Like pick one. Like tell me any. And they're like, oh, like I can't right now, and it's not. I can't really like tell anyone. And I'm like, okay, fam, yeah, you're a YouTube SEO expert, sure.
No, that's a really good point to kind of shield yourself from like the BS. And like the thing is, like when you get a recommendation, right? Like this is a recommendation, so it gets a little dicey when you have a recommendation on your hand because I was kind of new in the crypto marketing space specifically. I know how to market, right? Like I sell that product like I talked about, but I was like, hey, I'm not into crypto. I kind of need the connections. The whole point was they were supposed to bring on the connections, but they were very like closed vest about who those people were. Or they named a few to kind of like be like, oh yeah, we know this, and this. But to your point, did I really vet them? Not really. I didn't say, hey, show me the DMs or get me in a group with them. This is all via Telegram. So
yeah.
So anyway, we got kind of burned there.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say. Plus, people will they'll say things like I've heard that a lot in different business meetings. We're like, we're friends with this person, we're friends with that person, and I'm like, hold on, are you sure? Like, I'm friends with them, and they've never brought you up before. Like, you're working with them. Like, I've been working with them. Half the time, it's not really them. Half the time, they're on a Telegram with some random person in another country who's not this YouTuber, not this creator, and they lose money. Like, I've heard that happening all the time because they were like one of the examples was, they're like, hey, NFT versus another YouTuber. They're like, yeah, he's helping us with this project, and I was like, Angel does not help people like that. No, he doesn't. There's no way that's real. He's like, no, it's true. And so I messaged him. I was like, yo, you work on this project or something? He was like, fuck no. And I was like, okay. So I messaged him back. I was like, yo, I don't know who you're talking to, but don't send him a message. No, he's a real one. He lost like $10,000. He sent it to him. And the next day he's like, yo, that was the fake one. It wasn't really him. I was like, yo, I told you, you're in some random Telegram. He's like, I found him on Instagram. I was like, oh God. But
yeah, that's the kind of that's the bad part about crypto, right? Where it's an unregulated space. But I don't think a lot of people don't look at the flip side to that, which is there is a huge amount of growth that can happen without regulation. I'm a firm believer in that. Like if you put a lot of strings attached to a lot of different things that people are doing, they can't innovate as much. They can't try a bunch of different stuff, which, to be frank, the DeFi experiment so far has been kind of a failure. Let's be totally honest about that for a second. But I think that's because people are like not really, again, I don't think they're thinking through things as much. It's more of a quick win. Hey, I just want to get some money in my pockets, basically, versus I'm trying to build something that's long-term sustainable. Like you hear people say that, but then you look at the project and the actions and like how the smart contract works. I mean, you're increasing your supply by 2% a day and you're saying it's a long-term project. I don't know how that's possible. Like that.
Yeah.
At first I was like, oh, it makes total sense. They'll make it happen. I was like a huge believer. And then like I had some experience and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's never going to work basically. And there are like pretty simple reasons why, like, okay, that's called inflation and it just gets stupid after like a certain point in time. So anyway, like, again, I think DeFi has basically, like, people have coined it innovation. I just think it's way too far off the grid from regular finance. I feel like we have to get, and I know people don't like this. The people are not going to like this in DeFi when you say, hey, true innovation is probably just a few tweaks on traditional finance. It is probably not some ridiculously outrageous, crazy like return rate. Like that's probably not the answer. Like that's what we're doing to start, right? To garner more investors basically. But I think as we get closer to longer term vision, that will probably have to move closer towards a more traditional finance model. And that's not a I think a lot of people don't think that in DeFi. I think that's really, really bad thinking that, hey, we can just totally tear up whatever finance has been doing over the past 150 years. You can't do that. Like true innovation, something that's really much better than everybody else is like a small tweak. So give you an example, like, hey, we built this car. It has a combustible engine that takes gas. Hey, we built this car as an electric engine. Well, that's not really like, yeah, okay, there's a lot of technology that goes in that, but that's not a huge difference. It's still a car. It still takes you around. It doesn't fly. It doesn't, it's not a boat, like it doesn't do like a DeFi person would be like, no, it needs to fly. It needs to go like 370 degrees. It needs to go to space. Like it needs to go to the, like, that's what a DeFi person would say. Whereas like a regular business person would just be like, it just needs like a small tweak and we can do better than our competition. And that's kind of what we did on this project as well. Is like what they're doing is like cool, but it's like not as good as it could be. And we need to tweak that a bit to actually make it work a bit better. Like that's how innovation should work. It shouldn't be, hey, let me just take something, just completely tear up the foundation and the core concepts and just throw stuff at the wall and hope it works. That shouldn't be DeFi. DeFi should be more like, hey, like right now they have dividends and they're 1% every like quarter or something. It's like, maybe we should try to do those like retroactively or pay people back with revenue or something more creative, basically, but more still at the end of the day, it's a dividend, right? Like, so anyway, like that's kind of my thoughts on like where we are at DeFi. I think that's why everyone's getting kind of burned is like just too far off, basically, the traditional finance model.
Yeah, well, we're coming off like all the people who have been in DeFi are straight up degenerates, bro. They're used to unregulated bullshit. Like, I mean, it's cool. True. That's great. But like we're at a point now where it's so mainstream. Like that was the dream originally because that's what drives the price up. But now that it's here, it's like, oh wait, there's a whole lot of other things that happen with the going mainstream. And like you said about a small tweak, I remember I listened to a podcast with Lex Fridman and he interviewed a professional hacker dude. And he was like, yeah, the most successful hacks are so simple. It's not even a hack. He goes, we literally just find out the company's email list and we just send all of them an email saying, hey, we've switched our payment, whatever. Like, please add your payment details here. And they literally get like 50% conversion rate or something. I'm like, oh my God, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like to your point, it was a very simple solve. When we were this is what we try to do as like humans. And like, I should probably take a little of this advice myself because the project I run is a little bit complicated. Mm-hmm. We could boil it down to like just a few bullet points, I would say. But the thing is like we try to overcomplicate things just because we think it's kind of cool without really, to your point, just take the least path of resistance and just go that way, right? So that's something I'll definitely have to keep in mind because again, I think the protocol's a little on the complicated side, which I was told in the beginning, hey, just simplify it. But I'm like, yeah, but then it doesn't really do what it's supposed to, which is innovate off of current concepts, right? So it's a tricky thing to balance, I would say. Like, I think something too simple is probably not great, but I also think something too complicated is just way too hard to communicate and educate people on. Yeah,
there's definitely an in-between there. I remember I interviewed the CEO of Game of Silks NFT, which was a horse racing project where they paired it up to a real horse and they modeled it after the real world horse racing world, which is, I knew it mainly because I knew because of Squid Games, but like I didn't know how big that world was. And when I was interviewing him, he was like a super stellar entrepreneur guy, surrounded by a whole stack of people who are all hella qualified just in every aspect. And the idea was a bit ludicrous to me when I did the review, when I was talking to him, I was like, man, this is really out there. That's a serious fucking thing you're trying to do. It's a very long-term play. It's not one of those where you get instant money. You got to wait for the horse to actually go race in real life to be able to cash out anything.
That's
and I was
true.
Like, man, that's probably not going to work. And I was like, there's no way that people have that kind of patience. But it's one of those things that this was my biggest lesson. It's not just from this podcast, but in general, you always bet on the people behind it because they're going to be the ones who just make it work anyway. Like, okay, despite this and despite that, they still found a way to slither in and make it work somehow. Because now you look at that project, they've got a ridiculous amount of volume traded. I think, I know the floor is the only way to value a project, but their floor is a very respectable floor compared to what I thought it potentially could be just because of how much weighting there was going to be involved. But they market it the right way. They didn't over market it to where there's so much hype and attention, but they did the job and they crushed it. I remember it being like, just like, holy shit, they pulled that off. And so, you got to swing for the fucking stars because you might actually crack it. You might crack that ball.
Well, you swing for the stars and maybe hit the moon instead. That's
Exactly.
okay. That's fine. So like, yeah, I'm totally with you. Is that like, that's the other thing I think I've seen in crypto. And this is like kind of like my post-mortem analysis of DeFi in general right now. But I agree with you that like, if you don't think that person is quite capable or they're really just not on the ball, don't put your money in that project. Like I'm with you. Like, even if the project's the coolest thing since sliced bread, to your point, they're going to hit adversity. They're going to hit rough patches. And the thing is, if they're not prepared or they're not experienced enough to deal with that, the whole project will just crumble. We've seen it over and over again where like people are managing millions of dollars and they've never run like $1,000 a month company. Like, that's a disaster waiting to happen because they just don't know. They literally do not know what to do. It is not even I wouldn't even say it's really their fault necessarily. Like, they just got into something and all of a sudden it blew up, to your point. And now they're trying to manage a multi-million-dollar treasury or like hundreds of millions of dollars in money. And again, if you don't have that experience that you're talking about in that background and the ability to kind of pivot and change what you're doing, that project's over basically before it even started. And
there's almost no way to save it, because say you're a 17-year-old kid who, exactly like you said, has never run a business, and now what you got? So say everything goes right, you make $4 million in your treasury. Okay, now what? Do I hire a CEO? Do I stay CEO? I'm 17 with no experience. Do I hire a whole team and just step out because I'm basically fucking useless and I got lucky? Like, what is the right step there? And I remember I was in the middle of a podcast and they asked me why I never dropped a project, because there was a point in the market where if any YouTuber dropped any project, it crushed it. Every single one. And I wasn't even a big YouTuber, but I had enough of a following. I knew enough people where I was like, yo, I could literally make $2 million right here. Just fucking sell a raccoon picture project or whatever, and it will work. This is wild because people are going to speculate and FOMO in. But then I remembered, if this works, then what? Then I have to tie this raccoon project to my brand. It's not going to look good. I want respect from people. Like, at the very end of my career, I want to be like those. Either like, when you see like soccer commentators or UFC commentators, when they've all been like past champions and there's like a level of respect and they all kind of like banter back and forth, but it's cool because they're all like in the club. And I was like, I can't get in that like dope club at the end if I take all these like bullshit things when I'm on my way up and I become that guy who's like kind of a sucker and he sucks and he takes money from people and stuff like that. And that's just not the path I want to go down.
That's a really legitimate point, and this is why I think doxing in the future is absolutely required in DeFi for DeFi to actually work. Because what we had happen was a bunch of people had taken no accountability. There's some username. We don't know where they live, who they are, anything. And they can do exactly what you're saying. And there are no repercussions whatsoever, actually. FBI is never going to find them. CIA is probably never going to find them. Like, they're probably in like the middle of nowhere, basically, not even the States, I'm sure. So I think moving forward, the only way to truly progress this space is to literally have a face to a project, a name to a project, where I can literally say, this guy is ultimately responsible. If bad things happen, we know who to depend on. And to your point, your whole reputation is kind of gauged on that, right? So it is a huge risk. And people wouldn't do that. They wouldn't run projects that are super risky or scammy like you're talking about if there was a huge risk to where it could be tied to their name and they can't be on Mount Rushmore or whatever space that is. Like, that's a really, really legitimate point. And like people said, oh, if people want to be anonymous, it's cool. I'm starting to think that I just don't think so anymore. I really don't, because it's just, there's no accountability. It's kind of like remember back in the day, and like, well, maybe not back in the day, but like maybe like 10, 20 years ago on the internet, you could say whatever, whenever. It didn't matter who, like, you're just a
bro, not even that long, like 5 years ago, you could have done that. I mean, for the most part, like 5-6 years ago, before everyone became woke, you could pretty much do whatever you want. I remember,
troll, say racist things or just like really, really crazy stuff. Like,
people just, it wasn't really a thing, and now it is. But I agree that like this, it kind of ties into the woke movement as far as anonymity. And I've spoken to some project founders where it maybe makes sense, where, like, for example, the Board of Yacht Club started as an anonymous thing, right? And so later on, after they became fucking multi-million, and they got so much money, and like then they were like, like safety became a thing. And I was like, oh, I never really thought about that. But also, you can't take the $5 million and stick it in your bank account without some pushback on the opposite end. You got to take both, right? And so my angle there was like, you can't accept all the good stuff and then not have the negatives. So in my head, I respect everyone's decisions. They're going to do what they're going to do. I don't fucking care. Like, it's whatever, they can do whatever they want. But like, I do agree that there is a level of accountability you're not taking, even if you're a good person, even if you have the best intentions. If you're not, again, undox yourself, you're running away. Like, you're starting a business and a startup, and you're basically hiding, saying, well, I don't want to do it because of this. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to, then you need to put someone in the front who's going to be that person. That could be a content creator. That could be someone who's just good in front of the camera, but you got to have someone who's going to be the face of the company.
No, I'm with you 100%, because that's the other thing too, is like, oh, DeFi, anonymous, blah, blah, blah. This David said,
oh God, David says modern World War II lobbies. Fuck.
I've heard those. Yeah.
I've heard those, but I've never played, but all my friends did, because I never played video games growing up, but I would always watch because I sucked and they were good. That shit got fucking violent in there, bro.
Yeah, that's like all the doors are off again. No accountability whatsoever. So like, that's the thing, is like, I think people still think anonymous is still cool or like a thing that should be done. I just don't believe that anymore. I really don't, because again, we saw like someone raise millions of dollars and literally just said it's a failed project. Sorry, after losing like $1 million. Like that blows my mind. And literally I don't think anyone's going to be held accountable for that. Nope. I think there's like, whoops, sorry, failed experiment, shrug. And that's because to your point, there is no face. There is no single point of accountability. If something goes wrong with my project, this is the guy you're after. Like, that's in the story. Yeah. And the reason I do that is because it holds me ultimately accountable. And honestly, if people are putting BUSD or BNB or AVAX into something, is like, they should have a security net and saying like, Luke is taking as much risk as I am, if not way, way more, basically. So I think that's only fair to people. Like, yeah, okay, you're taking a risk with me, but like, let's be real. I'm taking like probably the biggest risk out of anybody here. And this is the other equation people get wrong all the time, which is, well, like, I understand you took a bunch of risks, but like, you shouldn't, financially benefit more than everybody else. It's like, but wait a second there. Like, isn't that how risk and reward works? This kind of comes back to my original point about CEOs, entrepreneurs not really getting their dues, in my opinion. Where it's like, oh, but they make all this money. I'm like, they also took the most amount of risk, and they're in the public eye all the time. Everything they do is under a microscope. Like, they're also the ones probably generating a ton of value as well. So,
but they take no weekends. They don't get to see their family. There's always a trade-off. Like Alex Hormozy said, he was like, quit bitching about not taking a vacation. You're the CEO of a company. Get your shit together. And I was like, damn, that's a good way to think about it. Because he's also a big proponent of like, he's also like one of those non-bullshit people, no bullshit. So someone asked him like, what's your morning routine? He goes, bro, fuck your morning routine. He's like, I don't care. If you're taking 2 hours to do a morning routine, what if you just spent 2 hours working instead? And I was like, fuck, like, if you're trying to be like the top dog, you literally probably have to have that, at least for a period of time, right? Like, there's going to be a period where you step back, but there's always going to be a period of time where you work your ass off and you have to go and sprint. And I'm sure you know that as a business, as an entrepreneur. Absolutely. Like, there are periods where you sprint for a fucking long time. I feel like I've been sprinting for 3 years straight now. Like, it literally, I feel like I'm coming over to a hump, but I've been sprinting for like 3 years. So I'm like,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Like, that's the other thing that, like, again, this is kind of goes back to people just want the rewards, but they don't want to take the risk or the work to get there. Mm-hmm. So like, we have to retrain people basically. I think there's something maybe wrong with how we're kind of being grown, like built up, whether that's parenting style or schools, probably a bit of both. I would say is like, something is wrong with that equation. Cause I feel like this concept just does not really get hammered into people well enough. Like if you talk to anybody, like I would say 80% of people, they might say, hey, I understand that, but the way they operate is nothing in regards to what we're talking about, or the way they feel, the way they think doesn't match up with like what they are agreeing with basically. So I would say like 20 to 30% of the world gets that. I would say the other 70 does not. And ultimately, I think it's on the people that are aware to actually educate others, not hate on them, not say, hey, what the hell? But it's like, hey, let's walk this back a second. Let's try to walk this through logically. Because I feel like that's what happens a lot of the time is like, we disagree with people and we just want to get emotional and upset and not really like try to walk it all the way through a process or a logical like, construct. So. Yeah,
for me, I've always wanted to learn. Like whenever I watch content creators, I figured there's something this guy knows or this girl knows that I don't know. I want it. I never thought to judge them because I'm like, okay, they're probably coming from a place of wanting to help, even if it's malintentions. Like there's probably something I can take from this anyway. And I think for the extreme people like a David Goggins, for example, who's like extreme, ultimate top motivation, you use that in the moments, in your moments of like desperation where you need some fucking motivation. That's when you turn David Goggins on. If you're listening every single day, it probably gets to a point where it's like, all right, bro, chill. Like, just relax. Like, I know you've never taken a break ever in your entire 40 years of life, but like, relax for like 2 seconds. And that's where people who are a little bit more less extreme can kind of lay out the actual steps to do so. Because you're right, I don't think many people do the things. It's kind of like the joke where at 3 a.m. you want to get your life together, and then by the time you wake up, you've lost all motivation to do so. And it's the people who do wake up and do knock out their 20 push-ups or go for the run or like start their business or whatever they do. It's for those people who actually follow through on the actions, because like BoJack Horseman's a TV show where they kind of hit on that, where he's like, yo, I'm a good person, right? I'm a good person. He's like, well, you suck, actually. Like, you don't do any of the things you want to do. It's like, you're not who you think you are. You are exactly like what you do. If you don't follow through with anything, you suck. If you're an entrepreneur who never makes anything profitable, never makes a profitable investment, and you're 35 years in, you probably kind of suck at entrepreneurship, and you're not doing the things you want. Like, you're probably not putting in the work that you think you are. So
that's a really legit point. And that took me a long time to learn. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm over 30. Like, I'm actually like quite old, I guess, in the crypto space, or older. I don't know. Like, some business owners, I think, or some successful projects are more around my age, I do believe. But it took me a long time to learn exactly what you're talking about, which is, it took me like, I had to hit my face in the wall several times before I was like, oh, like, I actually have to pivot, adjust, adapt. Because I was historically quite stubborn, and I'm still like a little stubborn, but I also kind of have to realize and be self-aware enough to be like, okay, that didn't really work out. I need to kind of like self-reflect that and be like, what went wrong there exactly? Because you know, I think something's going on there. So it took me a long time to build that skill. But again, to your point, you have to kind of work at that. You can't just like be like, oh, I'll just change like over time, slowly. Like, I want to change to now. You know, I want to change to happen instantly. At least, like, let's talk about like even like 1% or like 0.5% a day is amazing. Like, take that into compound interest terms, like, it's like thousands of percentages in change and like who you are and what you're all about in just a year. So to your point, running for 3 years straight, it's kind of like a physical toll, I would say, and also a mental toll. But at the same time, you've probably gained like so much from a change perspective. Like, you probably built up a ton of different character traits, different things you can kind of pull on in certain experiences. Like, I feel way more comfortable in my own skin than I did like 4 years ago. Like, and that's just from trying stuff, just doing a bunch of different stuff and not working. Like, a lot of failing in there too. Like, this is not like everything I touch just turns to gold. You know, it's like a lot of stuff I touched just didn't work, and like, I got wrecked, and you know, I went to zero, and I had to like ask for money. You know, like, literally that happened. I think it happened once or twice, but anyway, it's like, without those experiences, I just feel like you're kind of living in a lull. You're kind of just like, okay, I'm just humding along, like, this job, and it's great, you know, but like, which is great because jobs provide a level of security, and it's really good for you. But sometimes the job doesn't really force you to grow like you're talking about. So that's why I said before, it's like, I think it's important to just be passionate about something and try something new every so often, like, and just see what happens. You know, it's amazing. Like, you live one life on this earth. I mean, maybe there's lives in other places, but I know for a fact that we live on this earth once, you know, like, so, and then it ends. So like, you need to really kind of take advantage of that time. Like, wake up at 3 a.m. and get stuff done. Like, I do that like probably more often than I'd like to admit, actually, just because I'm like, you're thinking about something, right? You kind of have it in your brain.
Capitalize on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm going to be exhausted, but I'll just sleep it off the next night. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's how I do. Like, probably like once a week or like once every 10 days or so, I'll get in that like mindset where I'm like, yo, I should finish this. I should finish this tonight. And I will. And not every time that I will, but when I do, I'm like, fuck, like, that probably wouldn't have gotten it done if I hadn't done that. But to your point a second ago about building like calluses and like becoming better over time by kind of like answering the call, you're right. Like, I remember when I was playing high school and college ball, I would show up like on game day and get super nervous, and it would take like 15 minutes of kicking the soccer ball around, like getting a couple sprints in before I felt like a little bit comfortable. But it took like 50 minutes for me to like literally get into the game, which really sucked. Probably is the reason I never went to go play pro. But I kind of like took that with me, because I was like, why is it that I clam up on game day when I need to show up? Like, I got good to a point like towards the end of my career, like towards the end of like junior or senior year of high school, and then getting into college, I was able to like show up and be more clutch, which is what's necessary if you're going to make it to the next level. But I remember always feeling like uncomfortable in on game day, and I was like, that sucks. Like, that's not good if I'm practicing every day and I still can't do what I need to do on game day. And so the other day I had like an audition for a show host position And I was like super nervous for like a couple minutes before. And then like right as the camera turned on, I was like, yo, I do this stuff like every day. I'm
There
more
you
than
go.
qualified to just run a fucking chat and do a little thing where like I've memorized the thing. Like I already know what I'm doing. And so I think I was like 30 seconds in and I was like fully comfortable. I was like, this is dope. But that's because I have all those experiences back in the day where I was thinking about it. You know, intentionality comes into play there. And I think that's, as you said, just part of growing up and trying new things.
I think so. Yeah. I think to your point, that builds a level of confidence because you're like, yo, like I've been in this spot before, to your point.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be the exact same situation, but it's kind of like, hey, I've been uncomfortable before a soccer game, right? Or I've been in this spot before. I know what it feels like. I kind of overcome that, even if it's, you know, hosting a show versus playing a game. So I'm totally with you. Like that only came from you experiencing that as like a kid, like, you know, and then you kind of eventually got over it. But that likely is because you kept experiencing over and over again. You're like, okay, and I just need to get kind of used to this feeling and kind of just overcome it basically. But to your point, it takes a while sometimes. Like I wish that I would just change on a dime when I needed to in the certain areas that I needed to do. And it's like, that's sometimes not how change works because again, we can be quite stubborn. We can be like, no, this is the way, or this is just how things are. Right. That's a scary mindset, by the way. But yeah, it sometimes takes a little bit of time depending on the area and like just your personality or character in general. So
yeah, it's almost worse too. Like for if you're relatively inexperienced in rolling the dice on yourself and trying something, you can feel that mental shift where you're like, yo, I need to do this, and then you do it a couple times. You're like, oh, I feel fucking good, but then you're 3 weeks in, you're like, oh, fuck, you know, and you're like, oh man, like this felt a whole lot better 3 weeks ago, and you're like, man, this kind of blows actually. Like I remember when I was living in a car and I was kind of traveling the world. I didn't have any money really, so I would like, it wasn't that great, but I remember. Before I got there, I was like, yo, traveling and being a photographer has got to be the sickest thing ever. Like, I don't even need money. I can make that thing cool. And then I was out there living in my own, like, and I was struggling. And I was like, fuck, dude, I was like maybe 24 hours in thinking, wow, I made a mistake. This was way harder than I thought. Like, I don't know where I'm going. Where do I park? Like, where do I get food? I don't have a cooler. Like, how am I going to store food? And all these things, like, damn. Yeah, the dreams that are being sold on social media are a bit different to get there. And like anyone you see on social media that you want to be, they've done a substantially more work than you think, and it probably took 10 times longer. All the YouTubers, which now that it's funny that I'm doing YouTube, because they're still the same role models. They're all in their 30s and 40s, like almost exclusively. Everyone I watch and look up to is 30s and 40s because they've actually lived and done things. If you're 20s, there's not a whole lot we can offer. Like I can offer what I can, which is basically documenting my journey, but there's not a whole lot I've done to be like, look what I've done. Like Alex Hormoy's like, I've ran $100 million business for 15 years. Like, here's what I know. That's very different from me where I'm like, yeah, I've been doing YouTube for a while and I've tried a couple things here and there, but
that's a very interesting point you're making, which is like people look at like successful people or what I would say successful, right? Because I think the people that are actually truly successful don't really care that much about where they're at. They focus on where they're going typically. Like once you get into that mode, you kind of understand people are like, oh my gosh, like you own this 7-figure business. I'm like, that's great, but like I want to do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Like, that's like kind of like water under the bridge at this point. So I think people like in that we kind of get the sense that like, oh, they must be super happy. They must be super content. I don't think that's really the case if you're in like a successful spot. And I think to your point, like this is something I thought about a lot, or like just something I really kind of started to understood is that like the fact that I don't own a successful X or the fact that I'm not good at X is because I haven't done as much work as somebody else. Like some people are just super talented and that's just kind of like their thing. Like the NBA, people can't get an NBA unless like they're super gifted, you know, like that's kind of a different story. But I think in general, like sense is like when people are doing better than I don't think, oh, damn, I wish I was doing that well. I'm like, man, I wish I could learn as much as they can. Like they have, I could be in their spot. That's kind of what I think of like, oh, I have a lot more to do, kind of to your point. Like I have a lot more work to put in. I need to progress a lot more before I can be in that position, basically. And that's kind of that's a better way of thinking about it than be like, oh, I hate this person because like they just got it so easy. It's so made. To your point, it took them probably years of like trial and error and just trying to figure things out and just grinding.
Right.
At some point, like can't avoid the work. You know, it's like kind of an unfortunate thing. Like
plus, we all wish we could avoid it. Like what's going to happen? You're going to hate on this guy, then what? You're still going to have the same life, and all you did was waste your time. Like my friend Mark, he's been grinding as long as I have for years making video. I've been making videos since 2009. So it's a bit different. He's been doing podcasting for like 3 years straight, uploading like 2 to 3 TikToks a day, every single day, uploading like 3 podcasts a week and all these things. And for him, it was just like a couple technical things, which is the main reason he never blew up. Just terrible camera angles, nothing controversial at all to get clicks. He never really did short form content that was particularly exhilarating to where you'd want to watch that podcast. And I was like, bro, you're so good at this. You're just like one bit of content away. Like, I know it. It's just you got to change the camera. You got to have a little bit more intentionality when you're posting the video. And a few months later, after I'm banging that in his head over and over and over, he starts posting them every now and then, and they would get 3 or 4 times as much engagement. I was like, dude, this is it. Like, and then he posted this video where he's speaking to the camera, and I was like, Mark, let me tell you this one time. You are extremely fucking gifted at this. You just need to roll with this style. Just roll with this style for a while. And I remember telling him this literally to his face, because the reason this is crazy is because like 2 days ago, 3 of his videos go viral in a row, like 1 million views, 600,000 views, 50,000. And I was like, oh my God. And I looked, it was from 200 followers to 5,000 overnight. And I was like, bro, this is fucking it. This is literally it. This is crazy. But people are going to look at his viral video and go, fuck that guy. He just posted 1 video and I'm like, oh no.
Yes, that's right. But you know what, I think that actually has to do with, like, people like to say like insecurity, but I think a part of it is like, again, people want that reward without like putting in all the work, to your point. Like, they want to think that someone's an overnight success.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They can think it could happen to them versus, well, shit, like I actually have to like buckle up and do stuff and learn and grow and change over time, not like in a day or something like that.
Sure.
So I think a bit of insecurity, but I think it's also too is we don't want to be honest with ourselves and tell ourselves, you know what, like we have a lot of work to put in to actually get to where they're at. Like, that sucks, you know, like you don't want to hear that, of course, but like it's almost like everything that, like, again, I don't know why I thought, hey, this crypto project is going to be super simple. It's going to be super easy. It's going to go smooth sailing. We're just going to launch it. Like, no, that just didn't happen. Like, that was just Luke, I don't know, in La La Land, or like rose-colored glasses over here. Like, I've run a few projects. I should know better. Something always goes wrong, basically. So,
always. Yeah. And I definitely want to dive a little bit into more about Fortuna Finance as well. This will be like my last point here, because I know you brought this up a second ago, so that was interesting. As far as like people who are entrepreneurs looking into the future of where they could be and not really lollygagging back in the day, like what I used to PR in high school with my bench press, they don't think about things like that, but there are people who do think that way. And Mark is one of those people that I just brought up, the guy whose videos went viral. He thinks to the past with a lot of nostalgia, and he really loves like what happened back then. He's always constantly thinking about it. And I've never in my life I've never thought backwards. I didn't really have a fun child life. I hated everything about it. I was always just like insecure and like judging myself the whole time. So I don't have any like amazing memories to look back up. So I've always looked in the future as a kid. So that's not changed for me. Like, I'm always daydreaming about, like one day this, one day that, but I'm not living in the future. I'm just thinking about the future. Is that how you are as well?
Yeah, that's kind of how I don't really reflect. Like, I reflect if something really goes wrong, but I don't go very far back. Let's just put it that way. Like, I might think, hey, like a couple days ago, I made a bad decision, or like, hey, I'm having this like weird interaction with somebody. I probably did something wrong. But yeah, I don't really look back too much. Like, I just try to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to like keep moving forward, basically. Like, I'm very similar in that way as well. Like, I don't like to gloat about what I've done either, because it just doesn't feel like, when you don't feel like you kind of reach your potential, then there's no reason to be like, oh yeah, XYZ, and I raised this much money and I made this. Like, who cares if it's not really like, because like for the most part, you're not going to reach that max potential maybe ever. So I'm like, I'm more focused on where can I go versus where I've been, just because I just feel like I have so much more to give when it comes to the world. And I should be more focused on that than like either gloating or like reminiscing or something. Like, who cares that Luke, you know, aced his chemistry test or something? Like, that doesn't matter, right? Like, oh, I played like a year of varsity soccer or like freshman soccer or something. Kind of like, I mean, I played soccer like you. So I'm like, big deal. Like, that was a long time ago, you know? So I'm with you. I never go back too far back. If I do, it's because maybe I need to reflect and probably change something about what I'm doing, but that's usually about where I'm trying to go. Like, maybe that's preventing me from where I'm trying to go. So I need to kind of reevaluate. Like, on this project, I had to reevaluate, okay, marketing strategy, not going well. You know, like we paid them 10 grand, we raised 7. I think something's wrong there.
Yeah.
So I had to think about that for a second. Hey, like, what happened? All right, this happened and this happened. Okay. So we kind of need to just blow this up and kind of move on. So it's usually, if I'm thinking backwards, it's in the sense of how do I still get where I want to be? Not that was cool, or I was so awesome back then, or something like that. Like, yeah.
Do you think the whole marketing issue that you had, is that probably like the biggest surprise slash just like, whoa, what happened there? Is that probably the biggest you've dealt with so far?
I trust people too much sometimes. I think
Mm,
that's what that had to do with. I'm a very like optimistic, trusting person, I think at a core level, which does hurt me sometimes. Like I'm like, oh, like they just told me X. And like to your point, I didn't really vet that too much. And I was just like, yeah, okay, like this makes a lot of sense. They put in the space, they've done this before. Again, did I ask for screen? No. Did I ask for pre-response? No. Like
yeah.
so I think that's what I learned there is I can't be as trusting or optimistic, especially when it comes to crypto, because once you ship it over the fence, it's gone. Right.
Right. Right.
So I think that definitely had something to do with that for sure. And probably one of my biggest failures to date really is like the thing is the project didn't suffer. I just suffered because of
Sure.
that. Right. Like I didn't
That
penalize the
hurts, bro.
project
That's a
because
lot of money to lose right there.
yeah, it doesn't feel very good still. But like at the same time, I'm like, I learned something. You know, it's like, and that's the other thing. People are like going to be focused on, oh my gosh, like how why don't you like go after them? But I'm like, it's not worth my time. Like my time should be focused on where I'm going with the project, not on
Sure.
some failure in the project or something.
Plus,
I
you
just need to
learn
move
from it. Like
beyond that.
it's almost like like
Yeah.
sometimes I've lost something and it's been monetary, and I've probably like you have potentially could have gotten money back or something, but it's like, yo, I'm almost like paying for that lesson in a way. Like I remember I got my World of
Yes.
Women stolen in a stupid scam link thing, and I remember just being like, bro, I just lost like $6,000 whenever I paid for that. I was like, oh my god, are you fucking kidding me? And I just remember being like, yo, that was so stupid. Why did I like that? I clicked this link and I clicked connect wallet like 6 times. I was like, why did I just click my wallet 6 times? Oh, because I just approved it 6 times to do six, and I was just like,
Oh
fuck.
my.
And so I went to revoke cash and like revoked it immediately. And by the time I went back to my open sea, it was like World of Women has been transferred. And I was just like, motherfucker. But it's one of the things like now I look back, I'm like, yo, I paid the price there. But at the same time, that I feel like if I got my World of Women back, it almost wouldn't hit the same for me to take that
Yes.
into consideration next time. And so
Yeah,
that's
you're
kind of the way I
right.
look at
You're
it.
right. You're absolutely right about that. If I would have gotten that money back, I would have just totally forgot about it. But it hurts a lot more when it's still gone and like you had to deal with it basically. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think that's a very interesting lesson is like, again, that kind of comes back to what you were saying, which is don't harp too much about what happened. Just try to
Mhm.
figure out what went wrong and like register it, you know, put it in your Rolodex there and be like, all right, next time I can't do that as much, or I can't be that nice, basically, or I can't be that trusting. I need to be a little bit more cautious when
Right,
it
right, right.
comes to certain things, especially in crypto. So
So, anyways, let's pivot a little bit into more of the specifics of Fortuna Finance, or with so this is. Are you guys ever going to be looking to integrate like NFTs specific into it, or is it only just only messing with the crypto sphere? Like, are you trying to integrate like a Genesis NFT collection at some point?
yeah, I mean, we really want to get in NFTs more because like I'm big on NFTs that have use, that
Hmm.
actually have utility with them. I'm not big on pretty NFTs that just like, hey, that looks cool. It's like
Yeah,
those don't have intrinsic value. I want to have like NFTs that actually have intrinsic value. So like I do envision us kind of going a more NFT heavy direction just because our direction is going to be more gamified anyway. And like we want to have someone to have clear ownership over a character, over a
sure.
set of armor, over a sword, stuff like that, like where it's more gamified, but not a P2E game, which is very counter, I think, intuitive what people think should be done. But I think the fact of the matter is P2E can't be done right now. I don't think it's just too clunky.
Yeah,
My kind of vision is I'm going to build towards that. We're not going to start there though. We're going to build kind of towards a P2E game, but we're going to start with a UI based like web browser type thing. So I do envision us going more NFT heavy in the future. Like I really need to put some more thought into it, but like I think by end of year we're going to have something together where it's going to be NFT focused. It's almost like a modular NFT. So like I don't know if you ever played like WoW or like any sort of MMORPG or anything like that, but basically you have a character, they have a class, they have like attributes, perks, they have pros and cons basically. And you typically build out the character with armor, like sets of armor, like you get a helmet that does something, you get a breastplate that does something, and some shoulder pads. So our idea behind NFTs is going to be more of a modular NFT concept where I'm combining a bunch of stuff together to create this one thing. Instead of having like a random chance, like, hey, I just got a character that has a bunch of armor. My vision for NFTs is more like, yeah, there's gonna be some random components together, but I kind of want to like individually mint those things together, if that
mm.
makes sense. And
Yeah,
then
but Yeah, I was going to
Take
say you could
them,
also do
combine
like
them, and use them basically.
true. I was also going to say another era is also the like a token gating NFT where it gets you access to be able to potentially like I mean I know you guys are going to be doing this after, but I was going to say like token gating you could do like one of those where you make a certain amount of NFTs, maybe even like a small Genesis collection with a couple hundred for like main core supporters, almost like getting in like ICO where they get access to like the early coins or whatever. That's one
That's a
way
good
people
idea.
have used the NFT route, but also the way you described it. And I think it's going to be big for a lot of companies to have some type of avatar-esque thing where you can kind of be this character within the game. But I am very interested to see how the world works because you're right, play to earn's way too early. But are we
Yes.
like at what point? Like at what point are people gonna care about having that avatar the way they want? You know, is it gonna be one NFT or is it gonna be an NFT that's in a specific collection? Is there gonna be like a generic one that you can buy and make it to yourself? Do people want to be themselves or do they want to be some extra cool decked out version of themselves, you know?
Yeah, I really think, at least based on my experience in the video game, like our kind of focus is more gaming style. So this is going to be a gaming type of answer. But from my experience, people want to deck out their character and make it look cool as shit. Like they
Yeah.
just want to do that. So like my thinking is, I don't like historically NFTs have worked like this, where you have like 300 different attributes. It's totally random, and you just hope you get a rare one. I don't think from a gaming perspective that's great. I think that like there's a separation of things. Like there's a person, like a character, that's one NFT. There's a helmet, that's one NFT. There's a breastplate, that's one NFT. Because these are all assets that you own. And it's like you can equip the breastplate, you can sell it, you know, like you can put it on an NFT marketplace. So like I think that kind of modularity is going to be the direction. I don't think the idea of like, oh, like I just hope I mint something really cool and
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep minting till I do. I don't really like I think that like having a component of that is cool. Like if I want to mint like a random helmet, okay, I can't like a random character, but also like I should be able to mint the best helmet if I want to at a like ridiculous price. Like
Yeah.
the random component I would say in NFTs has kind of done a disservice away because you're going to have people that just want the best of the best. They should be able to get the best of the best, and that should generate revenue for you.
Sure.
Like that's kind of what I'm thinking from an NFT perspective. And I think that this idea that, hey, it's just one NFT is going to represent something in a game. I think that's crazy. I think you're going to need a ton. You're going to need like a bunch of different NFTs together to actually formulate something within the game, I would say. I think
I was gonna say that's innovative thinking there because I remember when I interviewed Voltura from Psychedelic Anonymous, that was one of the big things they're gonna hit on is trait swapping, where you can use their coin. They're gonna make this coin for their ecosystem, and one of the functionalities of it is to be able to swap traits, trade traits, sell traits, and stuff like that. And I was like, that's a great idea because I hate minting because I'm a collector. I don't flip too much.
Yeah.
I do some flipping here and there, but I mainly will just buy it, especially if I'm like friends with the founder or something. I'll go and find one on the floor that I like, that I fuck with, and I'll go buy that one. But I'd much rather pick and choose, dude. Like, I want the one that I want. I don't want some random one with a trait that I fucking hate, but I like every other trait. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, so I experienced that myself. There was a game I played. It was a UI-based game, actually. It was like kind of a little, I would say more along the lines of what Fortuna Finance is doing, where like you could mint. The problem is that like 80%, it was based off of Counter-Strike. So I don't know if you're familiar with Counter-Strike. They had terrorists, counter-terrorists, and a U.S. president what was it? President of the United States. Yeah. POTUS. Yeah, POTUS. That was the name. So in that game, you could literally just mint. That was it. And you just hope to God you get a SEAL, which is a counter-terrorist, or the POTUS, because they're ridiculously overpowered, basically. Like, or if you got a terrorist, it was like 80% of the pool. I was like, man, this sucks. Like, what if I just want to buy a POTUS? Like, to your point, I got to go off like on, some NFT marketplace and go get it. But like the problem with those, by the way, in general, when it comes to having it on your own cryptocurrencies, you basically crash your own price in a way because you can't really control the floor. If you can't control the floor is continue to go down. This is any commodity we know, right? Like if there is no like set floor to something, then it just keeps going down basically over time. If the project's even going sideways, that's typically the case because people are just trying to get out. So like our idea on NFT marketplace is to just do it in-house so that people can interact with the token, use the token. Because again, use case for a token generates value. And if it generates value, that generates a higher price. Like that's a big thing to think about when it comes to like NFTs, especially if you ever own token, is that like this should have value in our ecosystem because that drives a better price for our token itself. That's where true value is being generated. If true value is being generated, my token itself has intrinsic value to it. If it has intrinsic value to it, it's actually going to be worth something in US dollars. Like we saw this in World of Warcraft. Like literally people were selling the in-game currency for hundreds and thousands of dollars. I kid you not. Like they would literally farm the in-house currency in the game. They would list it online and sell it and like transfer it to people in game. Kid you not.
Damn.
Like, so again, this is a primary example that we already know about that like exists. It may not exist anymore, but it's like, that is a primary example of like why something can actually truly have value. And it's literally in a video game, like where it doesn't really have any value, but people love the game so much that they were willing to actually pay like some pretty hard earned dollars just for some more gold to get some more equipment, So anyway, I'm big on modular NFTs, and I'm big on NFTs that have use case, and I'm also big on NFTs that I think provide value to something in the ecosystem. I think all those things that combine together generate not only a valuable NFT, but also a valuable like project or ecosystem and token if you got one.
Yeah, yeah. And it's all about intentionality. You got to know like what you want to do and act a bit different. Like the way you launch a PFP project is a bit different than you'd launch an art project. If you want to do play to earn, like there's just different things you got to follow, different people you should be looking at for inspiration. Just because Board Yacht Club did well doesn't mean every single project that copies Board Yacht Club's model is going to do right. Because as we saw, almost all of them are down 99%. They're all dead as fuck.
Yeah,
and that's just sort of what happened.
And this is again the thing. There's no true intrinsic value to those. They don't really do anything. That's the problem. So like that's why I'm thinking like, hey, if you actually have an NFT that drives value, like literally, if you like the example in the Fortuna Finance landscape would be like today, if you have an NFT, you can get better rewards. Okay, there's value to those basically. Like that means something. You can just take the amount of dollars that the token's worth, kind of multiply it out and figure out how much an NFT should be worth, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then the future, what I'm talking about is, hey, like I can actually go win rewards off of people if I have a better character. Like, and that's going to be very valuable because literally that translates into something and maybe even something in your bank account. I don't know if I can say that, but that's kind of where the value is being generated from. It's like, well, if I have a better character, I can fight more people, I can do better, and I can ultimately get more rewards in this native token. That's great. And like there will be value generated off of that, which is why I'm so big on NFTs. I'm super bullish on NFTs, just not really the way they've been used historically. I think that they need to generate value in order to have some sort of established floor or value to them. Otherwise, we will see any new NFTs, in my opinion, that are just like art. I think we'll just go to zero kind of deal. Just because, like, again, it's kind of like a museum of art, right? If you think about it, a lot of those paintings are worth like thousands, $100,000s of dollars. But art in general, not worth a whole lot. Like I hate to say that, but it's and I love art, don't get me wrong, but like it's not usually not worth a whole lot. You only have like a select few pieces that like the top 0.1%, probably even less than that, are actually worth something because of some unique trait or some random thing that happened in that person's life or whatever. Right. So I think NFTs are in a very similar spot where it's like if it's just straight up art, then you'll have a very, very high, like small percentage where it's worth crazy amount of dollars. Then the rest of it is going to be, kind of something you buy at like a street fair or something like that. So again, I'm not trying to hit on artists. I'm just kind of giving the comparison of like, this is the art world as we know it, where only a few pieces are super value. Everything else is kind of like below $100 ish,
Yeah. So, yeah. That's a great point actually. And this brings up something in my head that, I don't know if you've seen The Mummy, the old Mummy with like from probably the early 2000s with, what's his name? Fucking Brandon Fraser. Here, let me show you like a photo of it. You may recognize it. It's pretty. It's somewhat famous. I feel like it's a pretty famous movie, I think. And let's see, 1999 film. Let's see if you recognize it.
Let's see.
Here we go.
This is the fun part of the podcast where you can't see. Oh yes, of course. Yes, I've seen this. Yeah, it's been a long time, so I hope I remember the scene.
There's a scene in this movie. Because the reason I bring this up is because we talked about art NFTs and most of them go to zero. Because you're right, most of them are going to go to zero. But it's also because the artists likely just make more art, and that's why it's basically inflationary. It's just like there's nothing negative value. So what I did was I posted a year ago. I posted 20 NFTs, and then I made a second collection with 26 NFTs. And I said, okay, like that's good enough. I don't have that many photos. So it's they're like my self-portraits. They're my most important photos I've taken, especially on that trip where I was living in my car and stuff like that. I was traveling around doing self-portrait photography. So I took a bunch of cool photos. And so the goal was to make a couple small collections, make those dope, and then just see what happens. And then after that is when YouTube picked up, and then a bunch of like my supporter people like found them, and they're like, oh my god, like he's got cool NFTs, and there's only a few, let me buy them. And then after they're like, did they do anything? I was like, no, they're just art pieces. But then I saw an opportunity, and I thought back to this moment in the movie where they say, hey Rick, the main character Ricochet, they're like, Rick, do you want to join the poker game? And he goes, nah. They're like, come on, what do you mean? Just throw some money, whatever, no problem. He goes, nah, man, I don't get with my money, only my life. And I was like, damn, that's well, one, that's fucking badass, but also that's how I thought about my NFTs, because like, yo, if I put all the value of these NFT photography pieces onto my career, into what I accomplish, if I become Joe Rogan one day, then I have accomplished my goal, and my NFTs will be worth a lot because there's only a small amount. True. There's not going to be an inflationary, just posting NFTs every day. It'll be these small collections, and if I don't, then I have gambled on my life and fucking lost, and everyone else lost because of it. So I have no choice but to try and win the game. And so that kind of puts that pressure on me. And that's where I try and drive value to my NFTs. And it's working so far. Well, hopefully it works. I think it will, as long as I don't just give up. But that's kind of like one way I look at it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's kind of an interesting perspective. And the thing you mentioned about inflation, I didn't even think about that component, where it's like, hey, they usually create more than one, or they have different collections or whatever. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, that would definitely drive down value. So like, that's something I haven't really fully thought through, just to be totally frank, is like limitations, because like right now our NFTs are pretty much unlimited. Sure. They're really just like, hey, if you want one, come get it, because they're quite generic. Like there's only 10 unique. And again, there's no cap or anything. Anybody can get any one of those at any time. So something tells me there might be something wrong with that model. I would say is like, there needs to be probably some rarity involved or in the mix. My only concern about rarity is like, what if the project grows exponentially, or what if it grows more and then I don't have any more of those? Like, how do I pivot? I need to look at the details, basically. Like, can I just create more NFTs? Like, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, you can look at it like Pokemon, I guess. Like Pokemon has like a few PSA 10 top tier Charizards, but there's only a couple hundred. And it's like, well, there's only a few hundred people in the world who can operate and try and trade. Like, it's like the people who have the top rarest NFTs from Board Yacht Club. There's a small category of people who can actually afford to trade within those NFTs, because that's a lot of money. And I think for those, maybe you just are like, damn, well, if there's 10, then they're just going to be worth a lot of money. But the thing is, there's not going to sell likely, unless it's a really hyped project. They're likely not going to sell. Like someone bought the Mechaverse top and bought like 500 ETH. He paid 500 ETH for the number one rarity Mechaverse NFT, and that project has gone to shit since. So he literally wasted 500 ETH. No one is going to buy that off of him.
Probably when ETH was like $4,000 or something.
Yeah, dude. That is a lot of money.
That hurt. Isn't it like 2 million? 20? I don't know. Some big number that I probably don't even want to calculate. That's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a lot of money. But yeah, my main point was that like, you have to know what you're doing, and then make steps that are in line with exactly what you want to do. And I see Janix put a comment here. I haven't even read it yet, but it's something about the art piece. So I think this might be a good point. If an artist puts out more work, it doesn't necessarily devalue the artist's previous work, particularly if an artist grows and makes really impressive art than the work they did before. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. For me, true. Yeah, I agree. Like, if you're Beeple, then it'll keep going up in value. But if you're not someone who's well known, then you're gonna have to become well known for something. If it's just your art, that's dope. I feel like that's less than 0.1% of artists. So let's be honest, most artists are broke as fuck. I was an artist that was broke as fuck a few months ago too. That's just how it is. You're not gonna sell NFTs, and like, unless you're doing something that's dope, that people want to hop on board with your journey or whatever, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be one of the biggest podcast show hosts, entertainer type people in the world. If that becomes a thing and you've held my NFT for 12 years from the beginning of when I started my YouTube, likely that NFT will go up in value. Likely I will have done cool shit for my holders, because I'll be growing in this space. Maybe I can go on Rogan's show and steal something off his table and fucking like send it to one of my founders, something like just stupid like that. But it's just things I want to do.
You might listen to this. Be careful.
But anyways, yeah, I thought that was a really interesting hole we could go down. But anyways, I want to ask you this question, because I think this would be an interesting take from you. What is your thoughts as to how massive brands are successfully going to bridge into Web3? How are they going to do it? Because we haven't seen that much success from these massive projects and companies.
Yeah, the thing that needs to happen there is that institutions need to actually see value in Web3. I think the crypto space is just too small. I think there's just not that many people operating in crypto. And so if you ask an institution, hey, do you want to take a lot of risk and maybe gain like 1% more revenue? They're going to be like, no freaking way we're going to do that, right? Because I think, isn't there like a stat, like only like 5% of people know about crypto or involved in crypto
Yeah,
or
I'd be
something.
surprised if it was that many, bro. I mean, I'm sure people have heard of it, but they don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so like that's the thing about institutions. I think they'll eventually come if there is a true value in Web3 and we're generating something that traditional webs can't. Then yeah, like they'll get into it. But I think until that point arrives, they're not going to touch it. Like just because there's no true ROI on that investment. This is how institutions operate. If I put $500,000 in this, what can I get out of it? They operate in a very financially way. Like they don't care about how cool Web3 is. They just care if they can extract value out of it, right? So I think we need more adoption first and foremost. And also, I think we need to have clear examples as to why Web3 is so much better than traditional web. I mean, obviously, I think it is because I think the way it interacts, the way you own things, that's all great. I think Web3 is really cool in that sense. It's a huge amount of security, in my opinion, as well. Like you truly own it. It's like sitting on this like little device. So like, well, kind of. I know it's on the blockchain, but anyway, that's the idea, right? Is like I truly own that. So I think those two things have to come true: more adoption first and foremost, and then secondarily, an example they can look at and be like, "Whoa, like this company is like killing us because they did X with Web3." That probably has to happen. Like even if we had, I guess, mass adoption really would be an easy way. I think if it was less adopted but they had a clear example why Web3 is like so awesome and they could actually leverage it to their benefit, that would be another way, I guess. Those are maybe the two different avenues. I kind of think they'll come together, or like they kind of need to come together at some point. But I think one of those two ways, then institution will actually touch them. I think until that point, they're going to just avoid them, right? Because the DeFi community, I guess NFT community is probably a lot bigger, but I know the DeFi community in general is quite small. I mean, we're talking about like 6 figures-ish, maybe, like somewhere around there. Like I know Titano was a project, they had like 80,000 holders. So maybe it's like 500,000 people, but it's not really that big. And like I think most institutions just don't see the value right now, right? So like they're not going to touch it yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. In the bull run, it may have been a bit of a different story because there's so much money that people were like, shit, if we might actually miss this boat. And we didn't know. We didn't like this. It could have kept going. Like you don't know where you're at in the chart until after, when you're looking at it, you're like, shit, we missed that, or like, oh man, we really like. There's so many times where I've been on the opposite side. Yeah. So you
We've all been there. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know.
It wasn't going to go up forever. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
That never happens, right? Like, I by the way, just a quick tidbit for everybody listening. I learned a very important lesson in technical analysis. I know people say technical analysis kind of BS. I think of it as a framework, as a set of guidelines, as of course not a bulletproof sort of way to analyze charts, in my opinion, because there's so many other factors. But it is something that can kind of remind you of something. So I was on a project, and literally the project was going up for like 30 days straight. I'm not even kidding you. And I was up quite a bit, and I was like, oh, it's just going to keep going up, like no big deal. But like what was happening there is there's 0 resistance levels, right?
Yeah.
Meaning the chart is literally like this. That's it. So like if it falls down, so usually how resistance levels work, everybody, it's usually like a psychology type thing, or people are fighting over that certain price. That kind of tells you, oh, okay, people will fight at this price and they'll try to maintain it. They'll try to push it above or push it below. When there's nothing of that sort in a chart, you're kind of like skating on very thin ice there. Like the thing is, since there's no sort of history about where people are going to trade, it could literally go back down to where it started, basically, where there was that first level of like fighting, right? Which in this project was like 10x below where we were at. So just a quick lesson on technical analysis: be careful on charts that are literally just skyrocketing, because they typically have no resistance levels. Therefore, we don't know where people are going to fight over price. Therefore, we can't really guarantee that like there will be any fighting on price when a sell-off starts to occur. So just a quick lesson I learned this year, like, is a big lesson for a lot of people, especially if the chart's going crazy up fast. It's like that is probably short-lived. And when it starts to come back down, you don't know where it's going to stop until you meet one of those psychological points where you do see some trading back and forth. Well, that's like an hourly, daily, what have you. But that was a big lesson for me. I was like, wow. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point. And plus, like, there's stop losses. People have like set limits that you don't know if they're gonna get triggered. That could have a cascading effect of some huge whale dropping out. Like, there's multiple coins out there who have 50% liquidity locked in one wallet. Nobody knows whose wallet that is. It could be triggered to to sell everything at this at this price, which is going to crush the price. The more people sell, and then next thing you know, you've lost like 90% of the revenue. Like that happened with this shit coin called Top G. It was trading. It was trending because Andrew Tate, this famous influencer guy, was like been trending for months, right? Yeah. So like I hopped in on this trend. I was in the first 6 hours, so I ended up making like a 7x on it, and then I got the fuck out because I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I checked the other day, it's down like 99%, and I'm like, that's just how it goes with shit coins. Like, you really just don't know what's gonna happen. So
okay, yeah, let's talk about the meme slash first and foremost, I know people like meme coins. I can't stand them because here's the thing about these, right? And I think to your point, this is kind of like the NFTs. There's no intrinsic value to these things, right? Like, if there's nothing truly valuable or like something actually holding value to the token, it's going to zero. Like, the thing is, there actually has to be a use case for the token for it to actually truly have value, which is why I believe what we're doing at Fortuna Finance makes sense, because it's like, there is a reason to hold on to the token. There's a reason to have the token. There's a reason to use the token. There's a reason to stake it, etc. Like, therefore, there is going to be some level of floor. It can't just go to zero. Like, I can, but super unlikely to go to zero, right? So that's something I just despise, actually, is like, I don't think those really help the crypto industry. I actually think
absolutely not. They crush us.
They just say, oh, it's a scam. Look at this chart. Like, this is insane. Someone just dumped on everybody. It's like, that's because the project didn't really have the thing is, you have to have a value add case. This is kind of like any sort of business situation, which I wish crypto projects would take it more like a business case, which is like, what value can I add to the world? And how is that going to impact the world overall and the space overall? Like, if you can't answer that question very simply, then you're kind of in a troubled state, right? Like, that project's probably not going to do well, right? So, or it's just living off hype. We've seen that. They live off hype, and then boom, it's gone. It feels like a rug, but it's not. It's kind of funny how that works, but I
there's a
can't
difference
stand
between like crypto
or memes or anything like that.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between like crypto and these projects and NFT projects and startups and stuff, and then the underlying technology, which is the blockchain. Like, there's a difference there. Like, the people who are billionaires who are buying into Bitcoin and crypto and stuff, that's because they see the potential of blockchain, not because they think Ethereum might win or they can flip for this much money. Like, they're buying because they're like, this innovation is here to stay. The blockchain is going to replace the internet, like all these things. So that's why they're buying. And that's why people who are in the space in the bear market, likely most of them are here because they're like, okay, whether or not this coin is right or that NFT project, like, something here underlying it is going to be here in the end. And we want to be the people who know the most about it when it gets here. That's the way I look at it, at least. I think that's a more healthier way to look at it. But yeah, so with Fortuna Finance, like, do you ever think about, so since you're keeping it all in-house, all within its own ecosystem for the most part, does that hurt in the sense of like expanding and broadening out the reach? Like, is there something that you guys are looking in the future maybe to kind of tap into that would give it like intrinsic value outside of its own ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're really just trying to build within. Now that could change, right? But I think right now it's like, it's kind of like, I like to give the example, if someone invested money into, like, let's say they bought a few shares of Apple stock, right? And they go ask Apple, hey, what are you going to do with that money exactly? And Apple's answer was, hey, I'm going to go invest it in Samsung, Verizon, and like AT&T. I'd be like, what are you, like, this is what a lot of projects do, by the way. It's like, okay, how does that exactly help me? How does that generate more value and revenue for Apple exactly? So I think like that's a lesson learned there, is like, Apple typically takes that, either stow it away or like do R&D, or they build better MacBooks and iPhones and basically generate better value within their own ecosystem. Now, as far as like external revenue sources, like B2B, so there's two differences, right? We have direct to consumer, right? Which is like, hey, I'm just selling a product or service to some person, right? And then we also have business to business kind of relationships. I think, are you asking more about the business to business side to see if like we could help another project, or are you just talking about, hey, some other external source of revenue, like some other game or project or something like that? Is that what you mean?
It's more like when like to eventually get to a point where you guys are like a top dog, there would have to be some, like how you were saying, there had to be some kind of thing that you're offering to the entire, I guess, community at large of crypto to eventually get to the top. I just didn't know like at what stage you guys were at. If you guys were like, look, we're just getting started, we're just trying to build out from the ecosystem out, and that's where you're at, or like where you guys were at along that process, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're really where we're at. Like, I would like to build a good foundation, because it's like a lot of times these projects get like scattered, like, oh, we got all this money. Let's build a DEX. Let's build a blockchain. It's like, whoa, slow down, because like you just got started, right? So I think you just, like, when you first start a company, you build products and services that are similar, but offer different types of benefits and whatnot to your existing and future customers, is what you typically do. That's how you expand early on. But to your point, you do have to have a point where it's like, okay, like we've exhausted a lot of those options. We need to maybe offer something else, or bring in some external like companies or other people, right? But I think early on, it's important to just continue to build on your own foundation versus trying to figure out other ways to like make money off of other projects. That always seemed kind of weird to me. Like even like yield farming and stuff, I'm like, that's kind of a waste of money. It feels like a waste. Like, why don't you just build something better in your own ecosystem? Like, build a new feature that people love, you know, like, so that's kind of where we're at. But again, that could change. I just think we're just so early on. It's like, we need to really try to focus on the things we're trying to do, which, you know, what I was bringing up earlier is like the beginning, it's more of a sustainable APY system. I think after that, it's going to be more of those modular NFTs where you can build out your character, fight other people, like, and then after that, like, honestly, I haven't thought like too much in advance outside of that. But yeah, that's kind of like what I'm thinking is like, we probably need to know like 2 to 3 features, I would say, to where that creates a level of utility, intrinsic value of the token. And then it's like, okay, what else can we really do? Like, can our NFT marketplace like help other projects? Maybe, but like, you already have OpenSea and some other places as well. So it'd have to be a ridiculous benefit. This is how I think about things, is like, we need to be able to differentiate to what else is out there. If we can't, let's not chase it. You know, it's like, let's not go after that. So we're going after stuff that we feel like is truly differentiated. I'm not necessarily against like external revenue sources or anything like that. It's just, we need to focus on where we think we can add the most value at the single point in time, and then kind of take it from there. So I'm hesitant on partnerships. I'm hesitant on like external revenue sources. And that's just because we have low control over those, and it's early, and we need to be careful about how we put the funds to use, basically.
Yeah. So tell me about like what are you doing? Like, what's a day? What's a typical day in the life?
Oh gosh. Let's see. I wake up, I check all my messages.
Me too.
Which is like, I don't know. Sometimes it's a lot, sometimes a little, but I check all my messages. I'm usually interacting with the dev team on a daily basis, interacting with the marketing team, kind of get stuff in line there. Interacting with our in-house writer / tester. He's been helping with the testing of smart contracts, which is
cool.
Thank the Lord done. Gosh, like we had one outstanding test, since again, the protocol is a little bit more complicated, but I'll check all my messages. And then typically like after that, like I do whatever I need to do from like a crypto project standpoint, maybe check in with a few people on like the main chat or general chat. And then I'll usually move on to like web development stuff before work, which is just like building out stuff in like PHP, Shopify Liquid, like HTML, CSS, just all those types of languages. And then I'll move on to like usually help the kids. Like if it's summertime, got to help the kids, like get them fed and whatnot. If it's not, then I got to help them get fed, get dressed, get on the bus or take them to school. Then I do my main job, like my main hustle. And then after 5, man, like I'm closed down, but I got this thing on me at all times. Right. So like I'm not like a stranger. Like I'm looking at this after 5 for sure. Just because like it doesn't stop, you know, like this stuff doesn't really stop throughout the day. But yeah, it's kind of a typical day in my life. Like I'll maybe have to make some website updates. Like I host a website, so like, and I'm a web developer, so I'll just make some updates like here and there. We added some YouTube videos in, which looks cool. But yeah, outside of that, like I'm just trying to make sure that everyone has what they need from a project perspective before I do anything else. Cause like sometimes they're waiting on me. I mean, I don't want to say all the time, but like stuff is happening overnight and it like the people are in different time zones. So typically I'm showing up and I got to do something. I got to answer to something. We're constantly changing our white paper. We're constantly publishing Medium articles, tweets, you know, AMA scheduling, like all these things. So that's typically like my first priority, I would say, and then do the web development main job and kids, basically family hustle after all that. So
isn't that wild that like they wake up same situation as you, but on the other side of the world or wherever they're at, and they're like, all right, hopefully Luke read my message and responded, because if not, I can't start.
Yeah, that like unfortunately that's happened where I'm like just so busy, or I'm like, oh gosh, like so there's maybe like a day of like, you know, just waiting or whatnot. Like that tends to happen when you're on different parts of the world. But yeah, that's like my typical day. I mean, I like to squeeze in a workout. Like I think taking care of your body is like probably one of the best things that you can do for growth, because if you're optimized and like your brain is getting what it needs, like micronutrients and proteins and vegetables, fruits, like you're going to be operating at such a higher level where like you could probably make a bigger change in your life than you could if you're operating off like pizza, Chipotle, stuff I binge on sometimes. Like I'm not perfect, but like I try to eat like more fish, vegetables, like protein bars, apples, like stuff like that throughout the day. Cause then it's cleaner energy, right? Like, so that's something I try to I squeeze in a workout at some point, whether that's in the morning or like midday if I have a break. And like, that's kind of, you know, like this is just a life thing for me, is like people deserve our best, and like we should be at our best. And part of it being at our best is like taking care of this thing, right? And spending time on our body, because our physical being, whether we like to say it or not, actually impacts this. You know, it's like we like to think that this controls everything. That's not really true. If your body is not really getting what it needs, like you kind of get sluggish, like you kind of get drugged down. There's nothing you can do about that. That's your body 100%. Dragging you down. So like, I really think about like taking care of like, you know, what is it? Body, mind, spirit, soul, something like that, you know, emotional side as well. Like, so I try to keep that in mind too, and not just like completely go ham at work. Like just try to like create some level of balance, because I know that ultimately is going to lead to likely better results and just interactions with people around me. So, because like if I eat a bunch of pizza and I'm interacting with somebody, that's a different conversation than if I ate like a piece of fish and it's a spinach. You know, like that's going to be like, Luke's exhausted. And he's just going to be super short and like be a bit of a jerk, or just be not as like, you know, elaborate, I guess, on what I'm trying to say, and just be like, da, 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 you know, like, so anyway, that's just something I think about a lot, or just, I try to keep that in mind. Like if I'm not sleeping well, I try to make sure I get good sleep, because you know, yeah, it sounds like you're kind of in this boat sometimes where it's like, I can't sleep. You know, I'm like, gosh, I'm waking up at 3, I'm waking up at 4 the next day, like 5 the next. It's like, gosh, I can only do that so many times in a row. I'm like, no, like you actually need to sleep. Because again, you're not at your best when you don't get like 8-9 hours. Like it's just really,
dude, that's a good point. I've never thought about that. Like, what if I had a really important podcast and I got 2 hours of sleep and I just wasn't the same, and I just didn't show up and it was bad? Like I think about that too. Like what if Gary Vee accidentally smoked some weed one day, and then you have you get to meet Gary Vee, but he's stoned or something. And you're like, what the fuck? This is Gary Vee? But like, I wonder how many times this happened where someone goes into like meeting you thinking they're going to get this version of you, and you just retired that day, or you were extra energy or something different. Like that's an interesting thing to bring up.
Yeah, that's something people don't think about a lot, but I actually think about this, because when I am like on point on nutrition, diet, exercise, and like just being in tune with like my family and whatnot, I'm a much better person like at work and what I'm doing down here than like I usually am, right? Like, so
when did you start figuring that out?
Probably over the past like same time. Like I knew about nutrition, I knew about diet and stuff before that, but I don't think I really realized like the level of impact it truly has on what I am currently doing or working on. Not until like the last like 3 or 4 years, I would say. So similar time frame, like just kind of realizing, oh, like I take care of my body. Like, man, I was really feeling it today. It's like, if you're really feeling it, you probably did something right. Maybe not like you have to think about all those spectrums, like spiritual, emotional, like body, like what was it exactly, right? It's like I need to kind of figure out what that equation is and like repeat that again.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Okay, well, listen, as we come towards the end, I have a couple like rapid fire questions. You down?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Yeah, I'm open. All
right. I always start with this question just because I don't know why I think this is interesting. It's the most common question you could ever ask anyone ever. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Yeah, and for some reason, dudes, we're all alike. There's probably been 2 men who have said anything other than blue. We just like blue. I don't know what it is. I like blue too. It's a good
color. It's a good color. It's a soothing color. Actually, that's probably a psychological thing. it's soothing a bit, or it's like, it just feels nice. You know, it feels nice on the eyes. Anyway.
True. I believe it. I believe it. I think right after blue is for me. I like the matte black, matte silver, matte gray, like that stuff. I like those whatever tone that is. I fuck with that. But I probably would go with blue as well. Okay.
I like black as well for sure. That would be my second answer probably. Black is a good color. I mean, I'm wearing it.
Yeah, I pretty much only wear. I mean, I'm wearing a white shirt now, but I typically only wear black shirts. Okay. Do you have any tattoos?
No tattoos.
No tattoos.
Crazy
Wow.
enough. No tattoos. Yeah.
Shit. Okay.
I just haven't really like ventured. It's funny. Like I'm really, I think quite risky, but I think that comes from an entrepreneurship perspective. But when it comes to my body, I'm like less risky. Like I don't want to go parasailing. I don't want to go skydiving. I'm very like risk averse when it comes to like bodily harm, if that makes sense. Or like putting a needle against my skin, for instance. I'm a little bit more risk adverse. It's kind of interesting.
Okay.
You think I'd be wild, crazy guy, like going out drinking or something. No, like that's not who I am at all. Actually, it's pretty wild.
That's actually my next question. Do you have a favorite alcohol?
Wow, that's a good question. I recently have really just enjoyed wine. Like
really, what kind of wine?
Usually like a bold red, like just like a really good red wine. You just the way it makes you feel, it kind of just relaxes you. It doesn't feel bad on the stomach because like beer is bubbly. It's a little like aggressive on your stomach. So like wine is just chill. And I was thinking about like, back in the Bible times, back in the day, they just drink wine. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense because wine is awesome. And like, it's not as like harsh.
Quote of the year right there. Wine is awesome.
Wine is not as harsh as like whiskey. You drink a whiskey, you're like, oh, like, man, like it kind of throws you back, which I do like. I used to like drink a lot of whiskeys or like scotches and stuff like that. But if I am drinking, my preferred choice is going to be like a red wine. It's just smooth.
Very cool.
Man.
That's a good point. When you bring like even like way back like Roman times, all they did was drink wine. All you saw those photos, and I've always wondered like which wine it is because I've yet to find a wine. I've found maybe one or two that I'm like, okay, this is decent, but I wouldn't drink this. But the idea of drinking wine in me is definitely like a romanticized thing. So I would love to find a wine that I fuck with too.
You probably need to get it from like we get it our wine from Traverse City, which is like the Napa Valley of the Midwest, basically. You need good wine. It's kind of like don't buy it at the grocery store. That's typically a mistake. That's probably what you've had.
That's exactly what I've had.
Yeah, you gotta get stuff from the source basically, or like some of the more niche down, like like closer to you kind of deal. Anyway, that's my recommendation for wines. It's an acquired taste, kind of like beer, I would say though. Still at the day, I'd still say it's acquired.
Yeah, I've heard it's acquired too, and I know it's just I gotta just try it. I think for me, it was that same with like tequila. Like I finally found a tequila drink that I like. Like I never really liked mixed drinks that much. I remember in high school I was introduced to like gin and tonic, and tequila and tonic, like just random generic drinks like that, and I never really thought they were good. But anyways, okay. Do you remember your first NFT? If you have bought one.
First NFT probably had to be that project I was telling you about because I wasn't like huge into NFTs. It was that Navy SEAL counter type play to earn project.
Gotcha.
That I was a part of. That
cool.
I feel a little salty about that because they put like they sold literally like 80 grand of AVAX in NFTs like pre-mints. They put like $5 grand of liquidity. That one hurt. Damn. We know what happened there. Like, come on, like seriously. Anyway. I digress. Tragic.
That's typically most people's stories with NFTs. Their first couple NFTs end up being nothing.
That was really sad because I really liked the idea of that project. It made sense. The rewards were way off though. Like they were way too high. They had no liquidity. They had no. Yeah, they basically killed that project before it even started, which is kind of sad because I thought the project was kind of cool. They just blew up the tokenomics and liquidity a bit. So.
Yeah, that's how it is. It's hard to know where and when to stop because like, oh man, more and more people are getting excited about it. We should just keep throwing up the numbers. But
I minted way too many that I'd like to admit. Let's put it that I was a huge whale in that project.
Shit. Shit. That's how it is. Okay, next question. What is your coolest destination you've traveled to?
Hawaii.
Yeah,
Hawaii's got to be it, man. That
Hawaii's
place
a good one.
Is just amazing. I get stir crazy though. Like I after like 3 or 4 days, I'm like, can we leave? Because you can't go anywhere. Like you know that you're on an island. I get a little like island fever. I don't know.
Do you remember which island?
Oahu.
Oahu's a good one.
I really like Maui though. Maui's like a huge rainforest that like isn't as industrialized. At least this was like 10 years ago or something. But yeah, man. I do like Oahu because it's more industrialized. You can go downtown, get some sushi.
True.
I like Maui because you can drive through the rainforest, hike, stuff like that. So
true.
It depends on your flavor, but I like both those islands really, really well.
Yeah, shout out Hawaii. I fucking love Hawaii. All right, this will be one of the final questions. Do you have any weird guilty pleasures that are very unique to you that you want to disclose? You don't have to disclose it.
I feel like this is a weird one, which is like I like working out and like hard workouts. Like I like to go really hard on my workouts. Like that's probably what I would say, because I think most people are like, man, that really sucks. But those kind of workouts, it's like they really push you. You know, and when you really get pushed, you really get tested. And when you get tested, that's it. And like you accomplish it, or you like kind of like go after it, and you actually accomplish your like the workout, like it's just like time in my example. Feels really good, you know, and like I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh my god, that's terrible! Like that sucks." But I really, really enjoy like I did like a 75-minute bike ride. I mean that was hard, man. Like that was really hard. I have a Peloton, so like,
okay, nice.
But like that was really hard. But I got done. I'm like, and I was literally, it looked like I got out of a pool. Like it was that bad. But I was like, man, that really sucked. But that was also like really awesome, and I feel like really good. So
hell yeah. All right, and then final question: do you have anyone you want to shout out?
I just think my team in general, they've been like a lot of our moderators have been alongside us like since the beginning, like seriously since May. Our new marketing team that we've been working with has been absolutely amazing. So
nice.
I just want to give a shout out to my team, and also, third one is our community. Our community has like been so just, I don't know, adamant about like, hey, like they think when people are in our community, I really like this because they're like, oh, we think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm like, yeah, so do I. Perfect. You know, we're on the same page. So I really want to shout out to like just the team and our community in general, like how strong they've been, because we've had to navigate through the woods. They've given me some grace, right? Which they don't have to do that, but everyone's been like super understanding, which is, you can't really replace that. You know, some people will get a lot of shade for, we were supposed to launch like last month around this time. So like, and we were supposed to launch mid-August. Now we're launching late August. So like, again, I know I could get a lot of shade and people can kind of like lose interest, but our community's been pretty strong. So just shout out to everybody in Fortuna's world.
Yeah, shout out everybody in the Fortunas world. And guys, if you made it to the very end, I know there's a couple of you guys who have been here since the very start. We appreciate you. Code word is going to be Fortuna. Spam the chats if you guys are here with us still. And if you're not watching this live as well, that'll be posted. So there will be people who watch this after live. Just code words Fortuna to know that you made it to the end. If this is not your first episode of the Joyage Kingdom podcast, I want to see OG spammed in the chats. That's the word. Y'all already know. This is, I believe this is episode like 90 something. I don't even know, but it's been like, make sure, it's been
congrats,
crazy.
Man. That's awesome, by the way. That takes a lot of like effort. Seriously. That's a lot of episodes, man. So
it is a lot, but I fucking love it. So anyways, yeah, thank you. And then also thank you, Luke, for coming on. It was a fun time chatting, dude.
Yeah, same to you. You and I feel like have very similar thoughts, and it was very interesting to hear your perspective on things. So
yeah, that was fun. I'm excited to reach to watch it back and kind of clip it up and see what little sound bites we can come up to. So thank you for coming on, and guys, thank you so much for being here. Smash like in this video, subscribe to the channel. I have Fortuna stuff down below in the description if you want to check them out. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed. Until next time, continue on your Joyage, continue to learn, and be grateful you're alive watching this video. Bye.